The courtroom is silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. At the center of it all sits Janelle Brown. Her eyes locked forward, her jaw set with a determination no one in the family has ever seen before. Across from her, Kody Brown shifts uncomfortably, his usual confidence cracked under the weight of a lawsuit that could change everything. $105 million. That's the number being rumored. A figure so outlandish it has left everybody from fans and lawyers to even the judge shaken. For years, money has been the unspoken shackle holding this family together and driving them apart. But now, the truth is finally going to come out. Secret accounts, secret LLCs, and a betrayal as deep as marriage vows. Every look shared, every form filed, every whispered witness bears the burden of decades of love, loyalty, and deceit crushing together in one shattering moment. This isn't a case, it's a reckoning. And once the gavel is about to come down, nothing will ever be the same again for the Brown family. Before we get into it, you better be subscribed to Sister Wife Daily Scoop, and let me know in the comments, whose side would you be on in this war? It starts a long way from the courtroom. In the hushed corners of Janelle Brown's life, where figures never seemed to balance. Bills were due, promises regarding Coyote Pass were drawn out, and yet the money Kody always discussed seemed to disappear into the ether. For years, Janelle held her tongue, reassuring herself that trust would conquer suspicion. However, trust can only hold so many fissures before it breaks. Late one evening, hunched over her kitchen table with stacks of unpaid bills and loan documents surrounding her, she began to assemble bits and pieces of financial information. Deposits which did not quite equate withdrawals. Business names she had never seen. Transfers that seemed like specters drifting in bank accounts. What started as curiosity soon descended into fear. Her kids observed the change in her energy. The easygoing Janelle became agitated. Christine, always her confidant, sat with her across the dinner table one night as Janelle spread papers out on it like puzzle pieces. "This isn't sloppy bookkeeping," Janelle whispered tightly. "This is intentional." Christine's face contracted as she realized Kody's need for control had spread from emotions and decisions into finances as well. When secrets are about money, they don't evaporate. They become increasingly heavy, until finally someone cracks under the pressure. The initial crack had occurred when Janelle decided to do something. She met in secret with a lawyer, not mentioning it to Kody or Robyn. It was a private session in an office near downtown, out of sight and away from gossiping relatives. She gave over the papers, her hands shaking a little, as the lawyer read through the pages. "You might be sitting on something very serious," he said, looking up at her. The words struck her like an icy wave. Validation and fear braided together. While that was going on, Kody continued in his characteristic bluster, still lecturing the wives on loyalty and family harmony. Robyn seconded him, emphasizing that sacrifices must be made for the betterment of all. But behind those sentiments, money was flowing. LLCs with odd names, property titles in odd trusts, and checks to companies the family had never even mentioned. Janelle dug deeper. Each new revelation stiffened her determination. She wasn't merely fighting for herself now. She was fighting for her children's future, for Christine, who had walked away, and for Meri, who had been pushed aside years earlier. This wasn't merely about betrayal. It was about justice. As she neared the truth, the picture grew clearer. Kody wasn't merely keeping secrets about love, but millions. The strain within the family thickened. Arguments became snappish. Meals became subdued, and every common room was filled with suspicion. Robyn attempted to act as peacekeeper, but her very presence only seemed to further fuel Janelle's suspicions. There seemed to be too many papers leading back in Robyn's direction. Christine cautioned her to proceed with caution. "Once you've opened this door, there's no closing it again," she advised, but Janelle's mind was already set. The day the suit was filed, Kody's world spun. The news didn't come quietly. It came with a bang, a $105 million lawsuit against him, from the wife who had once been his best bet. Cameras were stationed outside, reporters rushed for quotes, and social media exploded like fire. At home, there was silence. No one said anything, but everyone knew what it was. Kody burst through the house, fury just short of explosion, demanding answers. Robyn wept, insisting there must be some error. Meri remained silent, watching as if she had long foreseen this tempest. And Christine, a spark of satisfaction combined with worry, reminded them all that truth will out whether you wish it to or not. Each family breakdown had been building up to this, but nobody thought that it would detonate in a courtroom worth millions of dollars. Janelle, for her part, never faltered. Entering that courthouse for the first time, she bore no drama, only resolve. She was not the Janelle who had once walked quietly behind Kody. She was a woman ready to reveal secrets, no matter how painful. With every step sounding down the marble corridors, she knew she was moving not only toward justice, but toward a future in which she might at last be able to breathe freely. The trial had just started, yet already the stakes were higher than anyone could have envisioned. Family loyalty and decades of sacrifice were being stripped away, layer by layer, and with them the illusion of unity, revealing something raw, something ugly, and something far too potent to be ignored. And as the judge brought the room to order, Janelle gazed directly ahead of her, firm and unyielding, prepared for the fight that would try every last bit of courage she possessed. The doors to the courthouse opened onto a storm. Reporters ringed the steps, microphones extended like swords, cameras clicking with each motion. The Brown family had always lived under media scrutiny, but this was something different. This was not reality television. This was actual. A $105 million lawsuit wasn't headlines. It was history in the making for the family that once boasted about being united. There was a mist inside, a thick presence of whispers hanging in the air. Robyn came in with him, her hand wrapped tightly around his arm as if to keep him from falling apart. He attempted to stride in, but the burden of the accusation weighed across his features. Janelle was already sitting, her attorney at her side, piles of files organized neatly like ammunition. She did not glance at him, not even once. That silence was louder than words ever could be. Christine and Meri sat a few rows back, not as participants, but as witnesses to a war they had always sensed was coming. Christine's eyes burned with a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction, while Meri's gaze remained unreadable, calculating as though she was tallying up the years of betrayal that had led them here. Courtrooms don't just expose evidence, they expose character, and the facade that people wear quickly disintegrates under stress. The clerk started to read the charges, each word biting and weighty: fraud, concealment, misappropriation of funds. Kody shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening with each charge. Robyn wiped at her eyes with a tissue. Her shoulders shaking, Janelle sat rigid, her face carved in stone, although her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Then came the first volley of documents. Janelle's lawyer stood and began presenting transfers, LLC registrations, and property deeds, each page projected onto the courtroom screen. Names of companies no one had ever heard before. Signatures that bore Kody's unmistakable scrawl. Amounts that left the gallery gasping. It was like watching a puzzle being completed in real time, each piece falling into place to paint a damning picture. Robyn leaned in closer to Kody, talking urgently in a whisper, but he didn't react. His eyes flicked between the evidence and the judge, looking for some purchase in a room that seemed to be closing in on him. The more the evidence delved, the more and more impossible it seemed to deny that cash had been secreted, and secreted well. Janelle's attorney called her to the stand at one time. The room fell silent as she stood up and made her way forward, her heels clapping on the ground like a drumline. She swore, her voice firm, and sat back down, folding her hands neatly on the table. The attorney requested that she explain how she found the discrepancies. She told of late nights sorting through bills, of children wondering why it always seemed so tight, of vows given and broken. She spoke of the day she ran across the first mysterious LLC, the shiver that went down her spine as she discovered its link to Kody. Her voice broke but once, when she said, "I gave my life to this family, and I was left with nothing but lies." The gallery whispered, the noise soon stilled by the judge's gavel. Kody scowled, his cheeks red, but he was not allowed to interrupt. For the first time he had no pulpit from which to preach, no grasp on the story. When the truth at last speaks, it makes the walls constructed on silence tremble. As Janelle left, the tension increased. Christine gazed at her with pride, her eyes shining. Meri fidgeted uncomfortably, as if caught between former loyalty and the reality in front of her. Robyn, on the other hand, collapsed entirely, muttering prayers and shaking her head, as if absolute denial could wipe out the evidence displayed on screen. The hearing concluded with Janelle's attorney filing a motion for forensic accountants to drill deeper into the fiscal trail. The judge approved it. The words resonated like a verdict. This was no longer a case. It was an excavation. Every secluded nook of Kody's fiscal universe was now about to be excavated. Kody bolted out of the courtroom, journalists following him for a comment. All he gave them was silence. His lips clamped into a thin line, his eyes flashing with anger. Robyn followed behind, her tears streaming, covering her face from the cameras. Within, Janelle waited for a moment, watching him go, her shoulders squaring as though each step of his withdrawal gave her strength. Christine caught her eye, and nodded ever so slightly, a wordless gesture of support. Janelle finally felt she wasn't alone for the first time in years. What had started as rumors in the shadows was now a fight fought under the brightest lights, and the fight was only just beginning. That the second day of court began with tension that could be cut with a knife. The benches became rapidly filled, all seats claimed by reporters, legal observers, and nosy locals attracted to the drama of a family disintegrating under oath. The buzz of hushed conjecture dissipated the instant the judge appeared, his intense stare commanding quiet. Kody slouched stiff, his suit starched but his complexion revealing cracks beneath. Robyn held a notebook between her knees, writing anxiously, mouthing sounds as if whispering secrets only she knew. Janelle slouched serene, her files stacked neatly. Her attorney settled back with an air of calm confidence. The first witness of the day was a forensic accountant. He testified in calm tones, reducing intricate transactions into simple explanations. Page after page of bank statements scrolled across the screen. Money sent through shell companies, property bought under mysterious trusts, cash withdrawals gone without a trace. Each explanation was a nail in the coffin of Kody's financial narrative. Kody moved closer to his lawyer, speaking furiously in a whisper. But his lawyer's answers shorted out, became more clipped, as if even he were coming up short on explanations. Numbers don't lie, and these numbers told a tale of dishonesty too complicated to ignore. And then the moment everyone had not been anticipating. The accountant showed a chain of transactions connecting money to not only Kody but to accounts in Robyn's name as well. Gasps traveled around the room. Robyn's face went white, her hands shaking as she struggled with her tissue. She shook her head furiously, mouthing, "No, that's not true." But the proof was on the screen before everyone's eyes. Janelle did not gloat, she did not smirk. She just looked straight ahead, her quiet saying more than any words. Christine, though, edged forward on the bench, her jaws clenched, as if silently challenging Robyn to refuse what had just been exposed. Meri leaned back, arms crossed, face impassive but eyes piercing, drinking in every detail. The judge demanded order, his gavel slapping against the wood. The moomers fell silent, but the tension only grew. Kody's face was ablaze crimson, his eyes darting between Robyn and the evidence as if he'd been caught in a whopper of a lie much larger than he'd ever imagined. The courtroom wasn't revealing secret money, it was revealing secret alliances. As the session progressed, Janelle herself was again summoned, this time to speak directly to the new evidence. Her voice was firm but choked with emotion. "For years I was told that we were one family, sharing in faith and trust," she said, her eyes welling up. "But while I fought to put food on the table and pay bills, millions were being moved around in secret. I remained true. I remained silent. And for my silence my children and I were left poor while others benefited." Her words cut more deeply than any lawsuit could. Reporters wrote frantically, each sentence to be a headline. Robyn sobbed openly, her tears ringing in the silent room. Kody scowled, his fists clenched, but he was locked inside the confines of the courtroom, unable to yell or storm out. And then the unthinkable occurred. Christine was summoned to the witness stand. She strode to the stand with head held high, her jaw set with resolve. She testified about what had happened to her: broken promises, cash hidden, years of deception. "I left because I couldn't breathe under the burden of lies," she snapped. But now I'm here because Janelle deserves the truth. We all do. The effect was seismic. Christine's testimony made the case go from mere numbers on a page to lived experience. It wasn't Janelle's word against Kody's anymore. It was a chorus of voices, women who had once shared a life with him, now standing together against his lies. When the people who once stood beside you now stand against you, the fight is half lost. The judge leaned forward, his eyes squinting as he examined the evidence and testimonies. He requested a short break, his voice more serious than usual. There were whispers in the courtroom once again as everyone wondered what was to follow. Janelle sat calmly, her stance firm, though her hands shook slightly under the table. Christine reached over as she went by, delivering a quick squeeze of the shoulder. Robyn held on to Kody's arm, whispering hysterically while he gazed straight in front of him, his expression a scowl of rage and terror. When the judge resumed, his tone was heavy and spoke instantly for itself. Considering the seriousness of the evidence before me, he spoke slowly. I will be asking for an in-camera session with counsel on both sides to discuss issues that cannot be raised here openly as yet. Gasps spread again. A private session was something serious, something potentially catastrophic. Kody glanced nervously around the room, his confidence wavering more than ever. Janelle nodded only, ready for whatever storm was about to brew. The gavel fell, and the courtroom erupted into a frenzy of whispers and speculation. Outside, reporters prepared their breaking news updates. Inside, the Browns sat in silence, each of them realizing that the worst revelations might still be ahead. The secrets were only beginning to unravel, and what came next threatened to destroy everything the family had ever built. The doors of the courthouse slammed shut, the latch echoing like a threat. Outside, only the judge, lawyers, and Browns themselves were left in the intimate chamber. The walls seemed to bear down closer here, the air heavy, as if the secrets to be told were too burdensome for the public to see. The judge did not hesitate. He glanced straight at Kody, his tone firm but calm. Mr. Brown, the testimony presented shows the presence of shell companies associated with your family's finances. What this court has to determine is whether these companies were being used knowingly to hide assets from your wives. Kody shifted in his chair, his hand tightening around the armrest. Your Honor, he began, his voice wavering. Everything I've done has been for the good of my family. The structure, the businesses, they were meant to protect us, not deceive. But before his words could hit, Janelle's lawyer pushed a file across the table. In it were emails, signed documents and trails of communication that demonstrated Kody depositing money into accounts buried in layers of LLCs. More incriminating still, Robyn's signature graced several of the filings. Robyn gasped, shoving her hand into her mouth. I didn't know what I was signing, she said under her breath, her voice shaking. Kody swung to her in violent surprise, his eyes blazing, as if her protest of innocence was a shock for which he had not been read. In the blink of an eye, the facade of solidarity dissipated. Kody and Robyn no longer resembled collaborators, but co-defendants trapped in the same tempest. The judge read the documents in silence, his face impassive. Then, with calculated composure, he turned to Janelle. Mrs. Brown, how long did you think these funds were being kept from you and your children? Janelle took a deep breath. Years, she replied, her voice firm. I suspected for years, but I never had proof. I trusted Kody. I trusted the family. I remained faithful even when I couldn't afford rent. Even when my children asked me why we didn't have everything Robyn did. And now, looking at these documents, it confirms all that I feared. Her words hung in the air. Robyn's cries became louder, but Kody was stiff and unyielding, although his locked jaw betrayed his anger. Christine leaned in. She couldn't stay quiet. I saw it too, she stated, her voice harsh. Robyn always had more, always had stability while the rest of us were instructed to do without. And when we complained about it, Kody called it sacrifice, or faith, or loyalty. But it was never loyalty. The judge held up a hand to silence her, but it was too late. The hurtful words hung in the air, a reminder that the financial betrayal was only the tip of a much worse bruise. What was happening wasn't only about money. It was about decades of manipulation, privilege, and the gradual loss of trust. The lawyers exchanged blows, one claiming intent, legality and responsibility from the other. Kody's attorney professed ignorance, stating the businesses were legitimate and that they didn't intend to commit fraud. Janelle's attorney retorted with forceful clarity. The question isn't whether or not the businesses were legal. The question is whether the businesses were used to siphon off money that belonged to every member of this family. The judge heard him out, his patience wearing thin. I will be requesting a forensic deep dive into each account that is linked to these entities, he announced. And until that investigation is finished, all assets linked to these LLCs are frozen. Kody's eyes went wide. Robyn's weeping upgraded to a shriek. Janelle finally breathed with visible relief for the first time in hours. Christine laid a comforting hand upon her shoulder, while Meri sat silently, her face inscrutable but her eyes brimming as if she too was vindicated. The magnitude of the decision weighed heavily. A freeze equaled no access, no control, no lifeline. It meant all that Kody had worked for in secret was about to slip away from him. The judge stood. The end of the private hearing. We will be back in public court tomorrow, he announced. And I recommended that everyone get ready. The truth has a way of rising, no matter if we like it or not. As he departed, the Browns sat there in stunned silence. Robyn grasped Kody's arm, whispering wildly, but he shook her off, his anger coursing perilously close to explosion. Janelle silently picked up her files, her determination unfazed. Christine nodded at her in solidarity, but Meri hung back, staring at Kody with a mixture of resentment and curiosity. The walls of silence had started to crumble, and what was behind them would shatter all that was left of the family's delicate relationship. Next morning, the steps of the courthouse resembled the red carpet of a movie premiere rather than the door to a trial. Cameras popped, mics shoved forward. Reporters yelled over one another, competing for the initial response from anyone attached to the case. The whispers of a $105 million lawsuit had turned into a roar, and every network wanted a piece of the story. Janelle arrived first, flanked by her attorney. Her face was calm, composed, the kind of calm that comes from someone who has already walked through fire. Christine followed, her chin lifted, her presence a silent statement of loyalty. Meri slid unnoticed through the throng, her face impassive, but each lens captured her photograph anyway. Next were Kody and Robyn. The commotion burst out, reporters yelling questions. Did you stash money? Were the LLCs set up to defraud? Are you in fear of losing all you have? Kody growled, no comment. His jaw clamped, while Robyn held onto his arm, her own tears streaking already down her cheeks. Inside, the gallery buzzed louder than before. The judge had barely entered before everyone fell into silence. This session was different. The stakes were higher. The public was watching, and every word would ripple far beyond the courtroom walls. The initial shock arrived quickly. A new witness was brought in, a former financial advisor who previously worked very closely with the Browns. He was dressed to the nines, his testimony on point, professional, and hurtful. He explained how he had complained about unreported income, strange withdrawals, and offshore transactions. He said he personally warned Kody, but his warnings were ignored. Kody shook his head wildly, muttering to his lawyer, but the damage was accomplished. The words of the advisor spoke not only of negligence, but of willful indifference. When the truth comes from the mouth of one who was once believed in, it hurts more than any piece of paper could. Then came the bigger bombshell: property documents. The advisor showed that various luxury homes, allegedly bought on neutral trusts, actually directly traced back to Kody and Robyn. Snapshots appeared on the court screen. Grand houses, lush gardens, private driveways. The audience gasped, as if the very photos were a guilty plea. Robyn buried her face in her hands, sobbing silently, while Kody slumped back, looking up at the ceiling as if willing everything away. Janelle sat tense, pressed lips together, the vindication hurting almost as much as the betrayal. Christine covered her hand with hers, a gentle squeeze of solidarity in the midst of turmoil. The face of the judge grew stern. He addressed Kody's attorney. "Counselor, your client has consistently denied concealment of assets. How do you explain that?" The lawyer stumbled, scrambling for words, but none came fast enough. The silence was louder than any apology could be. The courtroom had changed. No longer a he said, she said battle. It became a case of irrefutable evidence. And if that weren't enough, the prosecution dropped the next bombshell: church community members' testimony. In turn, people took to the stand one after another to tell of donations, investments, and family contributions they were assured would contribute to the Browns' common benefit. Instead, that money, they testified, disappeared into the maze of LLCs. Gasps rang out with each of them. This was not only betrayal in the family, it was betrayal of faith, trust, and community. Kody's face was a storm of outrage and incredulity. He swore under his breath, his fists clenched so tightly the knuckles whitened. Robyn wept harder, whispering prayers, rocking gently in her seat. Janelle sat stock still, drinking in each word like a last validation for all she had suffered. The judge demanded order several times, but the energy was charged, uncontainable. The audience leaned in, their very lives hanging on every word, every accusation. Out on the street, the media thronged, streaming every update in real time. At noon, the session hit its high point when the prosecutor produced one final document, a series of emails, purportedly between Kody and a business associate, bluntly debating how to protect assets from dissolution in the event of a divorce. The inference was clear. As Janelle and the other wives made their sacrifices, Kody was secretly providing for life without them, defending his wealth against their rights. The gallery erupted in shock. Christine gasped audibly, her hand flying to her chest. Meri's lips parted slightly, as though even she hadn't imagined such deliberate betrayal. Janelle's composure cracked for the first time. Tears welled in her eyes, though she quickly wiped them away. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal, premeditated, and absolute. The judge directed the email entered into evidence, his voice harsher than ever before. He declared the court to adjourn for the day, deliberations to resume in the morning. The gavel came down, and the session ended suddenly, but the reverberations of what had been uncovered did not subside. As the Browns exited the courtroom, reporters yelled louder, cameras flashed more intensely, and the world witnessed a family once held together by faith and unity, disintegrating under the force of secrets too burdensome to conceal. The Browns' foundation cracks had turned into canyons, and the earth continued to tremble. The sixth trial day broke gray and chilly, as if the sky itself reflected the weight inside the courthouse. The tale had reached beyond gossip portals and celebrity blogs by this point. It was now national news. Commentators thrashed it out every night, analysts dissected every filing, and the Browns, who had once been a beacon of unconventional family harmony, were now emblematic of scandal. Within the courtroom, the air was thick. All felt that today would not only bring more figures, but hearts shattering under the burden of truth. The judge brought the court to order, and in short order Robyn was called to the stand. The gallery slanted forward as she came up, her movements hesitant, her eyes already brimming with tears. She gripped the Bible to take her oath, her shaking hands so violently the bailiff had to hold her steady. She trembled as she spoke. "I never wanted this. I never wanted any of this." She looked at Janelle, then at Christine, then at last at Kody. "All I ever wanted was a family. A real family." There was a brief softening in the courtroom, but it faded immediately. The prosecutor pushed Mrs. Brown, "Are you refusing to acknowledge your signature on the LLC documents entered into evidence?" Robyn's face scrunched up. "I signed documents Kody presented to me. He said it was for taxes, for property rights. I didn't know all the details, but I trusted him." She wheeled around to face the judge, her tears running. "Perhaps that was my error. I trusted too much." Kody shifted restlessly, glaring at her, his jaw clenching. It was subtle, but the gallery picked up on it. The control he used to have over Robyn was beginning to slip. The fissures of loyalty were no longer hidden. They were splitting wide for everyone to witness. Robyn's sobs became more difficult as questions cut deeper. "Mrs. Brown, did you profit from money channeled through these accounts? Did you reside in the houses bought with secret trusts?" She paused, her silence weighing more than words. At last, in a whisper, "Yes," gasps spread throughout the gallery. Christine's eyes went wide, her mouth opening as if she couldn't quite believe that Robyn had owned up. Meri dropped her gaze, her fingers tightly interwoven, as if holding on to her own control. Janelle sat statue still, her face inscrutable, though her eyes sparkled with unspoken confirmation. Robyn slumped further. I didn't know how much. I didn't ask where it was from. I figured Kody was providing for us. She gasped for air. But now I realize it wasn't all of us. It was me. The prosecutor allowed the silence to hang, letting the gravity of her confession settle upon the room. Kody's lawyer attempted to regain footing, protesting the emotional manipulation, but the judge ruled against him. The witness's words are pertinent, the judge declared in a firm tone. The courtroom had become a stage of confessions, and each confession ripped another layer of the family's facade off. Then it was Janelle's turn. Summoned to rebut Robyn's testimony, she stood up slowly, her hands wrapped tightly around her notes, but her voice steady without them. I lived with less for years. My children lived with less, and I was told that it was God's plan, that it was sacrifice, that we were creating something greater than ourselves. But as I budgeted groceries, as my children wore hand-me-downs, Robyn and Kody enjoyed comfort. Her voice shook, but she continued. I don't say this because I'm jealous. I say this because it was a lie. We were supposed to give everything and others just took everything. That's not faith, that's theft. The words hit like punches. Robyn cried even harder, turning her face away. Kody's anger overflowed. He smacked his hand down on the table, causing the judge to bang his gavel. Mr. Brown, calm down. But Kody was unable to conceal the disintegration. His face red, his breathing heavy, his composure slipping as fast as his fortune. Christine's eyes welled with tears as she heard Janelle tell her story. It was an odd combination of sadness and pride. She recognized the hurt in Janelle's voice, all too well, but she also recognized the bravery it took to finally voice it. Truth is not nice. It cuts, it burns, and it liberates all at once. The session became more intense as Janelle went on, telling of the years of silence, the many times she'd pushed aside her instincts out of loyalty. She told of questions from her children, of worrying at night about bills with rumors of new houses purchased somewhere else. Each sentence peeled back another curtain to reveal the life behind the cameras, behind the show, behind the facade of unity. By the time she concluded, the courtroom remained quiet. Even the reporters paused to write, as if in respect of the gravitas of her words. The judge cleared his throat, his expression somber. We will recess for the day, he stated, his voice gentler than before. Court will reconvene tomorrow with the presentation of closing evidence. I advise all parties to prepare themselves. The gavel fell, the room drew in its breath, but the Browns didn't budge. Robyn continued crying in her seat. Kody sat frozen, his fists tight, his scowl boring holes in the floor. Janelle breathed deeply, her eyes shut, as if the air itself was now lighter. Christine and Meri shared a glance of understanding, of unspoken accord, that everything from this point on would redefine what they thought they knew. The trial was reaching its conclusion, but the storm within the family had just begun. The last few days of the trial had a weight to them that everyone in the courthouse felt. The air was thick, charged as if the walls themselves were aware that the Browns' day of reckoning was imminent. The gallery was packed with reporters, shoulder to shoulder, writing furiously, cameras at the ready. It was no longer about money anymore. It was about truth, deceit, and the disintegration of a family that once stood before the public as unbreakable. The judge entered, his gavel ringing once. This court will now hear closing evidence and statements, he said, his voice ringing in the chamber. The resulting silence was complete. The prosecution started with a bruising presentation. Long boards showed timelines of money movements, tracing secret LLCs to high-end purchases and foreign accounts. Text messages and emails flashed on a screen, each one a damning piece of a mosaic that depicted Kody not as a father working for his family, but as a man methodically siphoning off millions from those who had trusted him most. Kody sat stiff, his jaw clenched, his eyes locked ahead, but the flash of panic within them betrayed his facade. Robyn squirmed uncomfortably next to him, her head lowered, her tissues already moist from unceasing tears. The story was no longer told in guesswork. It was spoken in stern, irrefutable facts. Then Christine arrived. She was summoned to the stand for the final time, not as a co-plaintiff, not as a bystander, but as a witness whose voice had the power to cut through the pandemonium. She entered confidently, her bearing demanding every glance in the courtroom. Her testimony was uncomplicated, slicing and unvarnished. "I believed in Kody for years," she testified, her voice firm. "I thought he was guiding us with integrity and belief. I left because I could not endure on the deceptions. Even after I left, I bore the burden of silence. I remained quiet because I thought voicing would break the family. But the fact is, the family was already broken, not because we left, but because of what was being done behind doors." She stopped, her gaze fixed on Kody's. "We made sacrifices, we complied, we trusted. And while we were bringing up kids in little houses, trying to pay bills, Kody was amassing kingdoms we didn't know existed. That is not leadership. That is betrayal." The courtroom was quiet, the weight of her words settling like thunder. Journalists wrote furiously, but even their pens slowed, as though anchored by the weight of her testimony. Kody's attorney attempted to interrupt, but the judge dismissed him. Christine wasn't providing speculation, she was providing lived truth, and the court had to hear it. Sometimes the loudest evidence isn't on paper, it's in the voices of those who endured the consequences. As Christine descended, she looked at Janelle. The two women shared a slight nod, an act of solidarity that was heard more than any voice. For the first time, Janelle permitted a very slight smile to touch her lips, not one of triumph, but of relief. Relief that she did not stand alone, that her voice had been met by another who listened. Then it was the defense's turn. Kody's attorney rose, his words biting but tense. He portrayed Kody as a man bogged down by the intricacies of business and family, adamant there was no fraud intent, only mismanagement and misplaced trust. He referred to Robyn's testimony as that of an unwitting co-conspirator, not a willing participant. But the words rang empty. Each argument was engulfed by the avalanche of evidence already exposed. Even the jury appeared unshaken, their gaze more intensely fixed on Kody's balled fists than his lawyer's pleading sentences. When the final evidence was over, the judge leaned forward, his hands together on the bench. He looked around the courtroom, his eyes resting on each of the Browns in turn. "This case has uncovered not only financial wrongdoing, but cracks of trust so severe, they cannot be overlooked," he stated. "I will consider all testimony and evidence carefully. My decision will be rendered tomorrow." The gavel struck once, signaling adjournment. The sound was sharp, final, a reminder that the end was near. As the Browns climbed, there was tension between them. Kody did not meet anyone's eye, his face a tempest of anger and terror. Robyn hung onto his arm, but he scarcely gave her a nod. Janelle departed with her head held high, her lawyer beside her, Christine trailing behind. Meri stayed behind, looking back and forth between Janelle and Kody, her own loyalties divided in ways she still could not speak. Outside, the press exploded again, bellowing questions, pursuing reactions, cameras strobing like flashes of lightning in a tempest. But within the hearts of those involved, the commotion didn't exist. Tomorrow did, the day that would determine, not only a lawsuit, but the legacy of everything they had created, destroyed and lost. The verdict wasn't yet spoken, but its shadow was already cast over them all. The last day of the trial came with a weight that seemed impossible to shrug. Protesters crowded the courthouse steps hours before opening, their banners and slogans ringing off the stone walls. News trucks filled the streets, satellite dishes angled toward the sky, prepared to broadcast the verdict nationwide. The Browns, who had once been reality television's symbol of religion and family, were now the focus of one of the most sensationalized scandals in recent years. Within there was tension that was palpable. Janelle was seated at the plaintiff's table, her files arranged neatly, although she barely glanced at them. She no longer needed the papers. It had all been exposed already. Christine sat behind her, rock solid and vigilant, while Meri hung back quietly, her arms crossed, her expression inscrutable. Kody and Robyn came last, His face was grim, his shoulders set as if preparing for a punch. Robyn's eyes were puffy from crying, tissues already crumpled in her fist. They didn't glance at Janelle, didn't glance at Christine. They gazed ahead, as if shying away from the burden of what was about to be delivered. The judge appeared, the gavel ringing once. Quiet descended. He cleared his throat, scanning the room. Upon careful examination of all evidence, testimony and financial documents, this court finds conclusive evidence of willful concealment and mismanagement of matrimonial assets. Gasps echoed out. Prolific pens scribbled across reporters' notebooks. Kody's face went white, Robyn shaking her head wildly, mouthing no no. The judge went on. Accordingly, the court holds for Janelle Brown. Damages in the amount of $105 million are hereby granted. Assets associated with the LLCs in question will be kept frozen pending their liquidation to satisfy judgment. Additional criminal investigation may continue at the discretion of the state. The room exploded. Gasps and whispers. Scratching of angry pens. Janelle was motionless, folded hands in her lap, a face of shock with underlying quiet relief. Christine put her hand on her shoulder, an admiring grin spilling through tears. Meri leaned across, her eyes shining, as if she too felt vindicated in ways she had not anticipated. For the first time in years, the power dynamic changed. Not in whispers, not in secret, but in the bright light of justice. Kody pounded his fist on the table. "This is a lie," he yelled, his voice cracking. The bailiff moved forward, but the judge's gavel came down hard. "Brown, calm down or you will be found in contempt." Robyn grabbed his arm, weeping openly, babbling frantically for him to sit. He slumped back in his chair, his rage breaking into something blacker. Defeat. On the street outside, hysteria detonated. Headlines flashed across all screens. Janelle wins $105 million lawsuit against Kody Brown. Reporters mobbed the steps, their voices blending into a maelstrom of questions. Janelle stepped forward gradually, her lawyer protecting her from the throng of cameras. She said nothing initially, yet her look told 1,000 words. Serene, determined, free. Christine came next, smiling weakly, followed by Meri, who brought an air of silence that begged questions. As Kody and Robyn left, the scene grew chaotic. Cries of fraud. "And where's the money, Kody?" echoed through the air. Robyn cried harder, burying her face, while Kody stormed forward hotly, his anger cutting through the cameras like a knife. Back in the courtroom, journalists sat up for days, weeks, maybe months of reporting. Commentators envisioned appeals, criminal indictments, and what next for the family. But to Janelle, it was all easier. Doubt, silence, sacrifice. All those long years finally resolved. Sometimes justice won't take away the hurt, but it shines so brightly that there is no space for deception to hide. As the sun fell behind the courthouse that night, the Browns were not simply a family torn apart by choice. They were a family defined by betrayal, laid bare in ways no television camera crew could have ever imagined. And for the millions of viewers, the questions rang out louder than the verdict itself. Could trust ever be regained? Could love thrive through the ruins of betrayal? Or was this the last chapter in a book that had been unwinding all along? Before you leave, be sure to subscribe to Sister Wife Daily Scoop, and I want to hear your opinion. In your opinion, was this ruling true justice? Or was it too little, too late for the Browns? Leave your comments below.